Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to participate to gʁafematik conference. It is a pity to not share with you this presentation live. However, I believe that this entirely virtual conference can give us interesting insights on the subject that I'm going to present to you now. I am Stefano Presutti, graduated in Cultural Anthropology and PhD in Linguistics at Aix-Marseille University in France. I teach Italian as an adjunct professor for the University of California Study Abroad program in Rome. The title of my talk is The Interdependence Between Speech and Writing, Towards a Greater Awareness. As the title suggests, my study concerns the relationships developed between speech and writing, especially on Western European societies. Along the axis of space and time, the balance between these two modalities of language changed many times. Moreover, nowadays, their relations are becoming more and more complex in the digital arena, challenged by intersections of technical resources and multiple needs of individuals and language communities. The main questions that I would like to examine in my talk are two. Firstly, I want to discuss with you the importance of a greater awareness that contemporary citizens of a globalized world should have for the complex relationship between speech and writing. Secondly, I would like to understand how and why new digital media could be useful resources for reaching that awareness. Let's have a look now at the outline of my presentation. First of all, I want to say something about the intersections between the notion of culture and these two different modalities of language. In the second part, I describe the main features of speech and writing. In the third part, I delve deep into the perception of literacy and in the Western societies. I will focus the attention on the different steps which led to a primacy of writing, even if it is generally conceived as secondary to speech. As opposed to this general idea of writing, I investigate its real autonomy from speech and their interdependence, also in a historical perspective. In the fourth part of my talk, I focus the attention particularly on the contemporary situation, in which new digital media are upsetting their relationship. After giving some examples of digital revolution, I will conclude my talk with some future proposals in the fifth and last part, in the conclusions. We, as human beings, can communicate with our whole body through gestures, through voice, and through movements. We can use all of our five senses to communicate with the outside world. But in all cultures, the verbal expression is the main language system of representation. Like speech, writing constitutes as well a symbolic system for representing human thoughts and feelings. Then it can also be directly linked to culture or multiple cultures, on which it developed and it was used over time. If we agree with this assumption, we are not questioning the linguistic arbitrariness of sign theorized by Ferdinand de Saussure. In fact, as you can see on the images of the slide, both older and contemporary graphic sign of the letter alpha on the top image and the Chinese ideogram below are just representing phonetically the vowel A and the Chinese word ma, that in English means horse, instead of representing the image of a bull or a horse. We are in fact, we are only assuming that also a graphic sign can never be considered neutral, because it was created and institutionalized in a precise environment, in one or more than one specific culture and language community. Besides, a writing system is also linked to the personality of each individual writer. In these slides, I have listed some characteristics of speech and writing. On one hand, writing revolutionized our relationship with time. In fact, it gave us the illusion of being able to be detached from it permanently. In addition, writing is durable and can be planned, counterbalancing the spontaneity of speech. On the other hand, speech is more dependent from the context on which happened the communication. Reading and writing can be individual and silent experiences, whereas oral production and comprehension are necessarily linked with noise and spatial presence of interlocutors. Finally, writing freezes the form and the content of the message, diminishing the linguistic oscillations of verbal communication. If we consider as well some features collected by Clark and Brennan for comparing the face-to-face dialogue and the traditional writing on paper, we notice that these two modalities of language show almost opposite characteristics. In fact, in the table, we see that only the sequentiality feature describes both speech and writing. The other 7 aspects of language are present just in one of 2 ways of language. Notably, copresence, visibility, audibility, cotemporality, and simultaneity depict just a traditional speech dialogue. On the contrary, reviewability and revisability can't be conformed with the spontaneity and ephemerality of traditional speech, while they describe perfectly a written communication. Now I want to turn to the third part of my talk. First of all, I briefly describe the historical development of the perception of this relationship. I focused my attention just in the Western world diachrony. It would be great in the next future to extend my research to non-Western societies as well. We could highlight 4 main stages on which the perception of this relationship changed consistently. The origins, which include the ancient era and the Middle Ages, the modern era, the electronic era, and the digital era. In the first period, where most of the people were illiterates, the main goal of writing was basically to support oral speech. Written texts were read aloud, and there were many oscillations with graphic signs. Thus, the reader had to interpret what he or she was reading. In the second period, the movable type printing invention in the 15th century gave to written communication a more and more prestigious role in the European countries. It was useful for creating models of language and for solving the unpredictability of speech. This phase also marked the attempt to hide the strong link between these 2 modalities of language. The third period, the electronic era, started in the 20th century. Globalization and the invention of technologies such as typewriters, TV, radio, computer revolutionized the way we communicate with each other. Finally, in the last 3 decades, the process of change of the speech and writing relationship has accelerated enormously with the use of the World Wide Web and with the new digital media. I'm going to speak better about this in the last part of my talk. Let's highlight now the main perception of speech and writing in Western thinking. Since the classical age, written communication has been perceived as non-independent and secondary to oral communication. In addition, the written language learning process is still considered today, in most cases, long and not natural, unlike the oral one. This perception started with great thinkers of the past, such as Socrates and Plato, and was equally assumed by many contemporary linguists, such as Humboldt, Saussure, Bloomfield, Hockett, and Martinet. At the same time, for many centuries until today, the written form has been considered more reliable and truth-bearer, a symbol of order and discipline. Literacy became part of the most valued cognitive habits of modern education, the mindsets of objectivity, analysis, and criticism. The term literacy itself, in the sense of the ability to read and write, also becomes a metaphor for learnedness in general, such as visual literacy, musical literacy, and so on. The semantic extension also covered the suffix graphy, used in terms far from the action of writing, such as choreography, scenography, etc. Writing has been considered as the decisive turning point for differentiating, through time and space, which group or groups of people would be more or less evolved than others. Thus, literates have more social prestige than illiterates. The ability to read and write distinguished also upper class and wealthy people, men and civilized white European societies, with lower class and not wealthy people, women and children, dialect speakers, foreigners, and colonized human communities. Written communication has been also a vital condition to elevate a language to the role of standard language, to erect it as a model for other languages considered less important, such as dialects, creoles, pidgins, slangs. Actually, we should rediscuss the widespread perception of dependence and secondary of writing that we showed previously, as well as the definition of their relationship as a mere dichotomy. First of all, we should say that some recent studies of psycholinguistics found that writing is not cognitively secondary to speech. During a mother tongue learning process, the orthographic system does not mechanically reproduce the cognitive path already traced by the phonemic system learned in earlier years. Thus, the writing system acquisition has a certain autonomy and creates original procedures capable of modifying the oral cognitive structures. As you can see on the scheme elaborated by Rosiello, we could see that a phoneme communicates with a grapheme just with its meaning. Instead, form and substance of the writing minimal unit keeps a complete autonomy from the phonological one. Finally, we should think of their relationship not anymore as a dichotomy, but as Holiday and other more recent linguists suggest, as two modalities of the same language, as two poles of an intertwined multidimensional continuum. This new conceptualization of written and spoken language relationship brings me to the fourth part of my talk. In this final part, I will particularly speak about the main effects of new digital media on language. In recent years, the speech and writing relationship has changed considerably due to the use of technological tools. Indeed, they allow us to revitalize the reliability of spoken language, to improve some shortcomings of writing, such as the excessive distance with the interlocutor and the lack of simultaneity in a dialogue. Finally, they allow us to find a new balance of their relationship. Particularly, we can recognize at least three great changes that new digital media are bringing to the continuum between speech and writing. One is the possibility to record a present event. This authorizes us to repeat the real scene as many times as we like. In this way, it is possible to avoid all the imperfections and uncertainties that always characterized the verbal communication. A second change is the dramatic increase of the number of active readers and writers. That is because new technologies are more and more user-friendly and affordable. As a result, it entices people learn not just to write, but also to become writers. A third change is the possibility to talk to billions of people with perfect acoustics. In the past, it was only possible to speak to a smaller audience in a square or in an enclosed space such as a theater. Conversely, today we can talk, be heard, and watched by anyone connected with us in the World Wide Web. Moreover, new technology incredibly improved the quality of sound through the use of microphones, speakers, or loudspeakers, giving to the human voice the possibility to avoid the uncertainty of weather conditions. We could now take again the language features collected by Clark and Brennan and resumed on a previous slide. Thanks to new technologies, spoken and written language can achieve or reduce the gap of the missing characteristics of traditional communication. Notably, I am referring to the virtual assistant like Voice Guide Navigator, voice recording in instant messaging like in WhatsApp, and video chats like Skype or Zoom platforms. Nowadays, a verbal communication can be reviewed and revised in recording audio corrected by artificial intelligence, while we can have co-presence, visibility, audibility, cotemporality, and simultaneity in writing, when we use tools like video chat, virtual assistants such as Siri for Apple system, translate voice as in Google Translate. Let's look now at three examples of interdependence between speech and writing in the contemporary digital era. The first multimodal example I would like to show you concerns instant messaging in apps like WhatsApp. As you can notice on this slide, a person can use quasi-synchronous typing written messages and voice messages recorded as well. Thus, in contemporary chat conversations, speech and writing are strongly intertwined. We can have a chat now, today, with spoken communication only, with written communication only, or with both. The second multimodal example I would like to show you concerns the video conference communication. in platforms like Skype, Google Meet, or Zoom that we are using actually now at this virtual conference. As you can see in the first image, in the video call we can talk or write something on paper, on a whiteboard, or in any other writing medium. In addition, we can download and upload simultaneously speech and writing messages in the video chat. Thus, thanks to this digital media, we duplicated the space in which it is possible to communicate, the three-dimensional space in which the interlocutors are, me and you, and the web chat space. The third and last example I would like to talk about concerns the interdependence in pre-recorded videos. I believe that the multimodality of using subtitles during a pre-recorded video, such as a movie, highlights the great and positive change that we are currently experiencing thanks to new media. Actually, this example was already present in the past decades, but today, in the digitalized era, as never before, subtitles are used in pre-recorded videos on web platforms like YouTube, and they are used daily by a larger number of web users. This also to increase the chances of being found by browsers like Google. We are talking about metadata. We can see how the interdependence between speech and writing goes through the whole process of a pre-recorded video publishing. We have this intertwined relationship, for example, during the writing process of the screenplay. After that, during the actor rehearsals. And finally, during the video projection with the addition of subtitles. If we think as well how speech and writing are related in any conference and presentation like this one today, I believe that the multimodality of new digital media blends perfectly the positive aspects of speech, such as the reality and truthfulness of the event, and the positive aspects of writing, such as the reliability and stability of a physical communication. In conclusion, we hope that in the next future, contemporary human beings may be more aware of the complex interdependence of speech and writing. They could be more conscious as well that new technologies are filling in the gaps in this relationship, offering us more and more opportunities to see these two modalities of language both autonomous and strongly intertwined. So that we can consider them as two sides of the same coin. In the next future, I hope to continue my research by deepening the relationship between speech and writing, not only in the Western world, but also in non-Western societies, particularly in language communities which use graphic systems different from the alphabetical one. Finally, I believe that it would be very important if we could create a learning path used in educational programs to bring students towards a greater awareness, so that the world's youngest citizens most involved in the digital revolution can learn first how to manage better the complex relationship between these two modalities of human language, and second, they can develop a better degree of linguistic flexibility, as suitable as possible for the most diverse solutions offered by new digital media. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, so any questions from Stefano? So I don't see any questions for the moment. I would like to advertise tomorrow's talk of Jessica Kuhn about the heptapod language, where you have a real example of interdependence, since these heptapods are aliens throwing ink, and this ink takes forms, and these forms are morphemes. So you have both writing, since you have a visual trace, and the qualities of sound, since it evolves, since it's vibration in a medium like sound. And I see that Cornelia would like to place a remark.
Yes, I just want to add something. I leave my camera closed just to add something. I'm involved in the formation of translators and interpreters, that there is increasing demand for instant subtitling. That is a video that is, as it is taken, is immediately subtitled, sometimes with the aid of automatic computer programs. And also we are beginning to train speech-to-text reporters. In German, that's Schriftdolmetschen, which is as somebody talks at a conference where people are actually present, not like us today, but where people are actually present. Somebody types out what is being said for those who are hearing impaired or deaf. And that's the skill that needs to be acquired. That's not something that you just can do naturally. It's something that needs to be practiced. I just want to add that these actually professionally done things between the modality of spoken language and written language.
I can't hear you anymore. Cornelia, are you here? Sorry?
I'm afraid
yes,
we
I
lost.
hear you.
Okay.
Well, late, but I hear you now.
Yeah.
Did I talk too quick, or did my sound not come across?
The last sentence was lost. Could you please repeat it?
Yeah, but
I think my last sentence was that we are training speech-to-text reporters. That is, people who transcribe things as they are being presented orally to an audience. So it can be projected onto a screen for those present in the audience who are hearing impaired or deaf. And that is something that needs training. That is not something you can naturally do. And I just wanted to add these remarks because these are activities by professionals on the continuum between spoken language and written language that Stefano had been talking about.
Okay, thank you, Cornelia, for your suggestion. I just started this research in the last few months, so I know that's perfectly that also technology is advancing very quickly. And for example, there are some errors in the last part that I think this is the most original one in my presentation. For example, I wrote that there was simultaneity in the writing new technologies, but actually it's quasi-simultaneity because it would be almost impossible. It would be impossible to have a perfect simultaneity with writing. So yeah, in the next research, I will try to shape, also to focus my attention on the new technologies on which they are translating contemporary, like the voice with the in a written language.
So thank you very much.